Welcome to Lock It Down Sports. I'm Locke Hoover, and as always, you can follow me on Twitter at Lock It Up Media. That's Lock It Up Media on Twitter. You can also check us out at E5280 Sports. That's E5280 Sports. And today on the show, where the Braves can look immediately for outfield help, college football playoff chances have been released. But first, I want to get into this. And when I saw this, maybe it was last week, this quote, I about fell out of my chair. Texas is the biggest game on everyone's schedule. Well, that's according to their quarterback, Quinn Ewers, said Texas is the biggest game on everyone's schedule. I read that, I go, wow. Talk about a bold statement, huh? I thought it was a bold statement. And to me, I think it's the farthest thing from the truth in the SEC. Now, maybe, just maybe, it was true in the Big Ten as, it's Texas. The big bad Texas scared everyone, intimidated everyone. Texas Tech played their best game. TCU played their best game. Of course, Oklahoma, Texas battling it out. Oklahoma State, probably one of their best games. All these schools, yeah, I get it. Texas might have been the biggest game on their schedule. In the SEC, that's not true at all. So let's just look at this. Since they are the biggest game on everyone's schedule, if they're the biggest game on everyone's schedule, why are they only 25-14 in the last 3 years? In the Big 12, I might add. And they're 40-22 in the last 5 years. And you have won your conference just once, one time since 2010. And that was last year. Also, the only time you've made the college football playoff. Does that scream biggest game? I don't know. Maybe in their minds it does. So interesting enough, the last 5 SEC champs in the last 10 years. So the conference had 5 champs in the last 10 years, Georgia having 2, Alabama having 3, and LSU having 1. Oklahoma, obviously the other team coming to the conference a lot more quietly, is 48-16 the last 5 years. Has won 8 conference titles in the last 10 years. Oh yeah, the same conference that Texas was in. That conference. So here's another one of my questions. So why isn't realistically and theoretically Oklahoma the biggest game, the bigger, the better opponent for teams other than instead of Texas? When you look at it, what they've done, their success over the last 5 years, yeah, that's 2 coaching changes with both of them, and Tom Herman and Sarkisian, and then Lincoln Riley and now Brent Venables. Yeah, absolutely. That's a coaching changes, but still, you're talking about big bad Texas, right? That's what he's talking about anyway. I think if you ask Georgia, they would tell you Alabama, Florida, Tennessee are bigger games than Texas. Tennessee would tell you Georgia, Alabama, and Florida are bigger games on their schedule than Texas. LSU would say Florida, Alabama, and Auburn are bigger games on their schedule. Alabama would say Auburn, LSU, Georgia are bigger games on their schedule. I mean, this goes on and on. Now, Texas A&M, yeah, they might say Texas the biggest game on the schedule, but that's the in-state rivalry. and the hatred of those two schools. It's lunacy, crazy talk, if you ask me, for Texas to be the biggest game on anyone's schedule. It's a game. It's an important game. It's another tough conference game, absolutely. But the game, the only one that these SEC programs get up for? No, not in the least bit. A good, tough game, a top 5, 10, 15, 25 program on any given year? Yeah, probably. But the game, as Lee Corso would say, not so fast. Because there's so many games and big games in the SEC. You can almost say there's a big game every week. I know that's not true, but they're just another good, tough opponent now in the SEC and on these program schedules. Now, the Braves need some help. There's no lie. There's no hiding it. So why not bring back an old friend to help in the outfield in Eddie Rosario and see what happens? I mean, why not? What is the worst that can happen, really, right? I mean, the way their outfield and offense has been struggling, so has Eddie. Rosario's hitting 183 overall. And so I was like, 183, he's playing a little bit more against lefties. So I was like, all right, what's he hitting against righties? Well, y'all, it's not good either. It's 182 against righties. Bring him in to platoon with Adam Duvall, who struggled against righties themselves, hitting under 100. I mean, what's the worst that can happen, right? I mean, and this would not prevent the Braves from going and getting any outfield help at all. Wouldn't prevent you from trading for an outfielder, and then you have Duvall, Rosario, and whoever you go trade for. Or maybe you don't have Eddie Rosario. Maybe you DFA him as well. You release him. You'd be paying the league minimum for the remainder of the season for a salary. We know how streaky Eddie Rosario is as well. What if he gets on a 2-week heater and is on fire? That could single-handedly win you some baseball games, especially as putrid as this offense has been right now. I mean, it's like the offense is behind 4 runs. It's like ball game over. Pack it in, that's a loss. Or if it's 3 runs, it's like, ooh, that's an uphill battle. We might be able to score 3, but it's an uphill battle. 4, you can basically kiss it goodbye. I mean, 4 runs with this offense right now is almost insurmountable. Eddie gets on a 2-week, 2.5 week, month stretch of being on fire, hit some bombs, hit some big hits in that 6, 7, 8, 9 spot in the order. That could be all the difference in the world of continuing to try to close the gap with Philly and lengthening that gap in a potential wild card spot. So why not? Wouldn't cost you anything. I mean, the roster moves would be easy too. You can either send on Wall, Force Wall, or Lucas Williams, or just IL Ramon Laureano right now, who the Braves are still trying to work through. I don't understand why they don't IL him now. I mean, Eddie Rosario is free basically. It's not roster. It's not like it's a roster spot crunch either at this point. You have a few options. I mean, my guess would be to send down Williams and keep Wall up for the speed to go play some defense, to go run him down. Especially with where this Braves offense is right now, they might rely a little bit more on the small ball, on the stolen base, pinch run with forced wall. Say it's an Eddie Rosario or Adam Duvall on the base pass, ring and wall, maybe steal a bag, get some scoring position, he gets knocked in. So how this roster is constructed right now, that would seem like the better fit to stay up. Yeah, I know they're both left-handed hitters in Wall and Rosario, but it's not like Rosario's killing the baseball right now, and I can still see Forrest Wall getting some hacks in that left-handed batter's box. I think it's a no-brainer, and if it doesn't work out, you know what the Braves can do? Release him, or say, hey, maybe he accepts a minor league assignment and he hits good in AAA, and they bring him back up later in the year, and he's ready for the postseason. I mean, that's an option too if he really likes this organization and is ready to, stick with them and play. But there's no loss for the Braves to go and try to sign Eddie Rosario right now. The club knows him. He's familiar with him. He's comfortable with him. Obviously, he's been in Atlanta the last, 2.5 years. And when the Braves brought him over here from Cleveland, he wasn't ripping the cover off the ball at all. He's hitting below 250. Hurt on the IL. We traded for someone on the IL, and he's hitting below 250. What's 250 and 183, right? Give him a look, see what happens. Now, speaking of seeing what happens, ESPN put out a computer-generated model, their FPI, about schools have the best chance to make the playoffs. And that is 18 schools have a 20% or better chance of making the playoff. To me, no surprise, 9 schools are in the SEC, have a 21% chance or better to make the playoffs. So Georgia's at 79, Texas at 68, Alabama's at 57, Missouri's at 37.3, Tennessee 36.6, Oklahoma 36.9, LSU 25%, and then Texas A&M and Ole Miss at 21%. Now, of these 9 teams in this 12-team playoff, you can only get 4 max teams in this playoff with the SEC. So there's a really good chance. And if you go 10-2, you're more than likely going to get in, especially in the SEC, this conference, from where you've been ranked all year, and your head-to-head wins and your battles and your victories. That's going to put you over the hump to get you in the college football 12-team playoff. And of those 9 teams, obviously, there's going to be a lot of head-to-head battles that are going to work themselves out. I mean, that's normal. They're going to take care of each other, and it's going to be worked out. Big Ten has 4 teams: Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, and Michigan. ACC, the usual suspects, with Florida State and Clemson. Then pseudo-member / independent Notre Dame. And this one I thought was very interesting, the last 2 schools. The Big 12 had 2 schools, and wait for it, guys, it's Kansas and Kansas State. And when I read that, I was like, Kansas State, not Oklahoma State, not Utah, the 2, not a BYU team, the 2 presumed leaders of that conference that are going to, you think, potentially carry that Big 12 banner into the playoffs. that just shows to me how wide open, like everyone thinks and expected, even these computer generated models are saying the exact same thing, how wide open this Big 12 conference is. Anyone can win it for the most part and get into the playoffs. And they're going to get 2 teams. I mean, their winner and then the automatic bid. So Colorado was actually the 3rd ranked highest team in this 14 in this ranking at 36th ranked team compared to the 17th and 18th ranked teams in Kansas and Kansas State. And like I said, Utah was not even the 3rd, like I said, not 3rd ranked team, which is interesting because Utah's getting their quarterback back. They're starting quarterback and some other players returning. So there you go. There's that. I think another kind of interesting thing in a different little model with this one, with this ESPN computer generated FPI model, is they didn't factor in the blue chip recruiting rankings, which I kind of mentioned and talked about in a segment last week, where if more than 50% of your roster has to be 4 and 5 stars in order to win a title. Granted, this is talking about getting to the playoffs, but you have to get in the playoffs first year, of course, to win a title. Auburn was on the blue chip list of a potential program that has a chance based on history and talent on their football team to win a college football championship next year. But they didn't make this list as far as playoffs. Of the 20%, they were below the 20% ranking based on strength of schedule and their roster setup, their offense of efficiency and their defensive efficiency, which this FPI model factors all that in. Auburn wasn't there. And I actually agree more with this ESPN model when it comes to Auburn than the blue chip model. And with the model, it's more going back to history and the overall talent on your roster, maybe not the current developed talent and how their schedule lines up and how are they going to be able to figure it out and be efficient, get a quarterback under Hugh Freeze. So interesting, different little breakdowns on some of those models that are always fun to see, to kind of look at as we're getting closer than you think to college football. It'll be here in the blink of an eye. Late August, we're about a month and a half away from, or 2 months from it being there. Late August, early September, from the pigskin being thrown around on college football stadiums and universities. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at Lock It Up Media. That's Lock It Up Media on Twitter. I'm Locke Hoover. You've been listening to Lock It Down Sports on 852 Sports. Talk to you next week. Have a good day.